I walked into the office that Monday morning, and the air hit me first. Not the smell of coffee or printer paper, something heavier. Eyes. Judging eyes. Whispering eyes. I could feel them like static crawling over my skin. "Hey, did you see what she's wearing?" Someone muttered just loud enough for the circle of desks to catch it. I froze, not because of the comment, but because I realized I was already the topic, already the target. I swallowed, tried to ignore it, tried to act like I hadn't heard, but their laughter, it bounced off the walls, ricocheted inside my head, and drilled straight into my chest. "Honestly, she's Sut's not ready for this project." Another voice chimed in, sharp, confident, mean, way too soft for Carlson Sip's expectations. I took a deep breath and made my way to my desk. Mr. Carlson's office was just across the hall, and I could see him through the glass. He looked up, caught my eye, and for a split second, that flicker of disappointment. I nodded, "Absolutely, Mr. Carlson. I've been reviewing the files over the weekend." He arched an eyebrow. "Well, let's see if your work speaks for itself." His tone wasn't harsh, just doubtful, public doubt. "Good morning, Mia," he said. But there was a weight behind it. "I hope you set her ready for the project briefing today." I went back to my desk, heart hammering, mind spinning. The whispers didn't stop. Every keystroke, every small movement drew more attention. I felt tiny, invisible, and yet exposed. I turned slightly. "Excuse me? Did you hear what Carlson said?" One colleague whispered behind me. Strong. That word stabbed me. Strong in their definition meant loud, brash, unafraid. Strong didn't mean smart. Strong didn't mean prepared, and apparently I didn't fit the mold. About the project. "He Sep's not sure you can handle it. I mean, you sir quiet. Never push for anything. He Sep's looking for someone strong." I clenched my fists under the desk, tried to force my fingers to stop shaking. "I'll prove him wrong," I muttered, more to myself than anyone else. A laugh rang out from across the room. "Oh, this is rich. Mizia proving Carlson wrong? That said'll be the day." I swallowed hard. Hurt, anger, confusion, all twisting together like a knot in my stomach. Lunch came and went. I barely touched my sandwich. Every comment, every glance, every sigh felt like a verdict. I started replaying every project I'd completed, every late night I'd spent reviewing numbers, drafting plans, triple-checking reports, and still, invisible, underestimated, branded weak. By mid-afternoon I found myself outside the office, staring at the city skyline, pretending to make a call. I needed air. I needed to think. I whispered to myself, almost like a vow, "They think I sup weak. They think I can sup handle this. But they sup were wrong. So wrong." The anger that had been simmering all morning turned into something else. Something sharp, focused. I realized something crucial. Their doubt wasn't a reflection of me. It was a reflection of their underestimation. My quiet dedication had been invisible to them. My strength had been silent, waiting. I returned to my desk with my chin a little higher. My fingers hovered over the keyboard. Every whispered doubt, every smirk, every eye rolling, it fueled me. I would take every word, every laugh, and turn it into my armor. "Ready for the briefing?" Mr. Carlson asked again. This time I didn't flinch. "Yes," I said. And I meant it, not just ready, but sharper, smarter, more dangerous than they could imagine. That day, the word weak became my enemy, and I decided then and there that it would never define me, not now, not ever. Because I was done being underestimated, and I was about to rewrite the rules. I walked into the conference room that morning, carrying my proposal like it was a piece of my soul. Weeks of late nights, endless revisions, every detail polished, every number double-checked. I thought I was prepared. I thought I was ready for this moment. "All right, everyone, let's get started," Mr. Carlson said, leaning back in his chair. His eyes scanned the team, then landed on me. A flicker of expectation or maybe doubt. I couldn't tell which. I cleared my throat. Steph prepared a comprehensive plan for the next quarter. I believe it addresses all current challenges and outlines potential growth strategies. Kevin smirked from across the table, tapping his pen like he owned the room. I ignored him. As I went through the slides, I noticed subtle shifts. A few colleagues exchanged glances. Someone stifled a laugh. My pulse quickened, but I pressed on. This was my moment. Adequate, he said casually, flipping through my report. Well, it covers the basics. When I finished, I looked up, expecting recognition, a nod, even a good job. But Mr. Carlson leaned forward, hands clasped. My stomach dropped. Adequate? I asked, voice trembling but sharp. Yes, he said, almost smiling. Adequate, solid, I suppose. But, he paused, and my heart sank. Kevin here brought an interesting concept yesterday. Half-baked, really, but creative. Could be a game changer. The room erupted, not with applause, but laughter. A few snickers, a whispered joke, a shake of the head. My fingers dug into the edge of the table. Quiet, Kevin. Carlson cut him off, smiling at the whole team like he was hosting a private joke I wasn't said aloud to hear. You still on to something. Mia, we still come back to your proposal later. Let's Seppels explore Kevin Seppels' idea first. Kevin grinned. Thanks, Carlson. I just thought. I felt the blood drain from my face. My hands shook so violently I had to grip the table just to keep from knocking over my coffee. I wanted to scream. But I. Sit down, Mia, Carlson said, and the weight in his tone crushed me. Not anger, not correction, just dismissal. I sank into my chair, heat rising in my chest. The laughter around me sounded like knives. My colleagues, my so-called teammates, all watching, all enjoying this performance at my expense. I could barely breathe. Every nerve was on fire. I wanted to vanish, to disappear into the floor. I wanted to throw the proposal at Carlson's face and storm out, but I didn't. I couldn't. Instead, I sat there silent, swallowing the lump in my throat. But inside, something shifted. A tiny ember of fury sparked. Kevin's smirk was the last straw. I had spent weeks preparing this, working nights, missing meals, skipping plans, and here he was, getting praise for something incomplete. And Carlson, my boss, he was encouraging it. Publicly, laughing with them. I whispered to myself, barely audible, this isn't set over, not even close. They settle all see. I felt the first sting of tears, but I pushed them down. Not yet, not here. I clenched my fists under the table, knuckles white. Are you even listening, Mia? Carlson asked suddenly, snapping me back. The meeting dragged on. Kevin babbled about his concept. Carlson nodded, jotting notes, asking questions. I stared at the table, but my mind was elsewhere, plotting, calculating, recording every smirk, every laugh, every condescending glance. Yes, I said, voice steady, though my chest was tight. Of course. He gave me a slow nod. Good, make sure you integrate some of Kevin Sepp's points into your next draft. Could be interesting. Interesting. My life's work reduced to a footnote in someone else's half-baked idea. I excused myself after the meeting. My hands shook so badly I had to grip the doorframe to steady myself. The hallway was empty. I leaned against the wall, closed my eyes, and let the silence wash over me. Shock, rage, heartbreak, all tangled inside me like a storm. I wanted to scream. I wanted to cry. I wanted to burn the office down, but none of that would fix this. I needed something else. Something sharper. The ember inside me flared into a flame, quiet, deadly focused. I pressed my hand to my chest. They think I selt, just take it. They think I selt crumble, let them watch. Let them think I selt broken. But I selt not, I swear to myself. I one selt just survive their mockery. I selt make them regret ever underestimating me. Kevin would not get away with this. Carlson would not get away with this. Every laugh, every smirk, every glance, they had all lit a fire I wouldn't extinguish. I opened my laptop back at my desk, fingers flying across the keyboard. Every insult, every dismissal, every jab became data. Plans, moves, strategy, karma, I promised myself, would taste sweet. By the time the sun dipped below the skyline, I wasn't just angry, I was alive, alert, dangerous. That day, humiliation became my fuel, betrayal became my blueprint, and the word adequate, it became the spark for everything I was about to unleash. They thought they broke me. They hadn't even begun. Instead, I began watching, listening, breathing in every word, every glance, every small movement that slipped past the untrained eye. I stopped talking. I stopped trying. I stopped showing. Kevin leaned back in his chair, smirking at his reflection in the glass wall. I don't get why Mia even bothers. She steps, predictable. I heard it every syllable, every sneer. He laughed, thinking no one was listening. But I was, always. Sarah giggled. Yeah, some people take forever on the simplest things. Later in the break room, he bragged to Sarah about his latest weekend adventure. I mean, I just handle it, easy, not like some people need to overthink everything. I pretended to sip my coffee, shoulders relaxed, eyes calm, but inside I was taking notes. Mentally, every weakness, every overconfidence, every reliance on charm instead of effort. Mr. Carlson had blind spots too. Everyone did. He praised whoever shone in meetings but ignored the quieter workhorses behind the scenes. I saw it now, tiny cracks in his judgment, gaps I could exploit. Kevin was careless, always smiling when he should have been listening, always speaking when he should have stayed quiet. That was his first mistake. During a team lunch, I listened to grudges bubble up like hidden streams. I can believe he got credit for that, murmured Linda. I did all the groundwork. All of it. Just let it go, another voice said. It's Seps Carlson-Dist's favorite. Nothing we can do. Ah, favorites? Loyalty masked as competence. Blind spots disguised as charm. I didn't speak. I only nodded subtly, letting the information sink in. Everyone thought I was silent. Weak. Invisible. Perfect. Kevin laughed again in the hall, bumping shoulders with Tom. Don't worry, buddy. I got Carlson wrapped around my finger. You see. I observed alliances forming like invisible chains. Who trusted whom, who envied whom, who whispered behind whose back. These people had secrets. Tiny fractures I could slip through. Tom chuckled nervously. Yeah, sure. I smiled, almost imperceptibly. Carlson didn't see it, Kevin didn't see it, but I did. I saw everything. Each careless remark became a puzzle piece. Each confident stride, a crack in his armor. I memorized patterns, who spoke first, who faltered under scrutiny, who clung to comfort zones. I began timing the small things too, the flick of Carlson's pen before he dismissed an idea, the way Sarah twirled her hair when she was nervous, the half-smile Kevin gave when he thought he'd won, all tiny, seemingly meaningless signals. But to me, gold. At my desk, I kept a private log in my head, not in writing, never in writing. They might notice, but mentally I catalogued every small betrayal, every ego trip, every misstep. I mapped out the battlefield without making a sound. Hey Mia, Linda whispered one afternoon. Are you okay? You've been quiet all week. Just observing, I replied softly. Linda blinked. Observing? I nodded, smiling faintly. Learning. She frowned but didn't press. Good, that's all I needed. Silence, freedom, space to understand. I watched the meetings, the coffee breaks, the hallway banter. I let Kevin talk himself into a corner with arrogance. I let Carlson dismiss ideas he thought were inconsequential. I let grudges fester, letting people underestimate me further. While they laughed, I calculated. While they schemed casually, I strategized in silence. Silent revenge doesn't start with confrontation. It doesn't start with shouting or accusations. It begins with understanding the battlefield, knowing the patterns, the weaknesses, the hidden dependencies, knowing who is strong where and brittle where. And all of it would work in my favor when the time came. They thought I was weak, invisible, harmless, predictable. By Friday I could anticipate Kevin's jokes before he said them. I could predict Carlson's praise, the exact inflection in his tone. I knew which colleague would slip first under pressure. I knew the invisible rules that governed the office. Perfectly predictable. I leaned back in my chair, eyes narrowing as I watched Kevin argue over printer access with Tom. He gestured too broadly, his face red. I don't have time for this nonsense. I took a slow breath. No, I whispered to myself. You don't, but I do. And that made all the difference. By the end of the week, I knew more than any of them imagined. Kevin's charm was shallow. Carlson's judgment was flawed. The alliances that seemed solid were paper thin, and me. I was the only one seeing the full picture. Because in the quiet, in the patience, in the observation, I was building my power, carefully, silently, invisibly, waiting for the moment when the scales would tip. I smiled, almost cruelly to no one in particular. Silent revenge doesn't announce itself. It waits. It watches. It learns. And I was ready. The office lights were dim when I stepped out. Empty streets stretched ahead, quiet except for the echo of my heels. I wasn't thinking about the walk. Not really. I was thinking about power, about control, about rewriting the rules they'd set for me. I reached the old cafe, near the law district. Inside, the familiar smell of leather and parchment hit me, and there he was. My old mentor, now a corporate lawyer, sitting with a folder open, eyes sharp as ever. "Mia," he said, voice calm, but with that edge that made you sit up straight. "I almost didn't recognize you." He raised an eyebrow. "Guidance or revenge?" "Stev changed," I said softly, sliding into the chair across from him. "I need guidance." I smiled. A little bitter, a little dangerous. "Maybe both." He listened, quietly, jotting notes. Not sympathy, not judgment, just focus. He nodded slowly. "Good. Tell me everything." I spilled the story, the meeting, Kevin Carlson, the humiliation, the laughter, the dismissals, every snicker, every condescending glance. I blinked. Weapons. "Mia," he said finally, leaning back, "power doesn't always roar. Sometimes it whispers, sometimes it waits silently in a signature. Contracts, legal stakes, equity, these are weapons." "Yes," he said. "Think bigger. What if instead of reacting you preempted? Instead of shouting you documented? Instead of begging for recognition you owned it? Legally, permanently." "I want that," I said, voice barely above a whisper. "I want to take what they assume is theirs and make it mine. For real." The words lodged in my chest. Permanently. Owned. My chest tightened. Could I actually do it? Could I turn their dismissal into something tangible, unstoppable? He smiled faintly. "Then we do this carefully. One wrong move, and they still smell it. But done right, you still have the power they mocked you for. Quiet, undeniable, legal." He pushed a folder toward me. Thick paper, clean lines, the kind of precision that made my pulse race. "This is the contract," he said. "It secures stakes in the project you've been working on. Legally, all yours. Airtight. No loopholes, no favors, no way they can challenge it." I stared at it, my name printed clearly. Ownership, authority, validation. Kevin's smug grin flashed in my mind. Carlson's casual dismissal. The laughter of my colleagues. I felt a thrill, sharp and dangerous, curl up my spine. "Absolutely," he said. "But you need to understand the weight. Once you sign, it SEP's public record. Legal, unchangeable. You own it." "You so serious?" I asked, my hands hovering over the paper. "If I sign this, it STEP's mine." I hesitated. Fear, a quick stab in my chest. This was bigger than I'd imagined. I could fail spectacularly if I misstepped. But beneath that fear, triumph pulsed. A steady, intoxicating beat. I picked up the pen. The ink glided onto the paper like a heartbeat. One line after another, my signature sealing what had been assumed impossible. As I set the pen down, a rush of heat flooded me. I was shaking. Fear, exhilaration, power, they all mixed into a heady cocktail I had never tasted before. He smiled, satisfied. "Remember, Mia, revenge doesn't always scream. Sometimes it waits, legal and untouchable, while they continue to mock you, and then it hits. Hard." "You feel it don't set you," my mentor said, noticing the tremor. "That SEP's agency, that SEP's control, that SEP's the moment you stop being a pawn." I nodded, staring at the contract as if it were a living thing. "They think I will fail. They assume everything is theirs for the taking. But this changes the game." Quietly, invisibly, I will already winning. I imagined their faces when they discovered what I'd done. Kevin puffed up with arrogance, realizing the project wasn't his to charm his way through. Carlson, confident in his judgment, finding out that his favorite had been legally outmaneuvered by the very person he underestimated. "Good," my mentor said. "Now keep it quiet, let it work in the shadows." A slow, dark smile spread across my face. "They'll regret underestimating me," I whispered. I left the cafe with the contract tucked under my arm. Outside, the city lights glinted off the pavement, mirroring the gleam in my mind. I felt lighter, sharper, untouchable in a way I had never felt before. Every step back to my apartment was deliberate. I imagined the office on Monday. Kevin strutting in, Carlson unaware, everyone laughing at the weak me. They had no idea. And soon, they'd find out. Slowly, brutally, legally. At home, I placed the contract on my desk, stared at it, traced my name with a fingertip. My chest tightened again, fear and thrill entwined. This was mine. Not borrowed, not gifted. Mine. I poured a glass of wine, hands still trembling, and raised it to the empty room. To agency, I whispered. To power. To silent revenge. Because now the weak one they all laughed at held the cards. The taste of it was intoxicating, sweet, dangerous, and for the first time in months I felt unstoppable. And the game had only just begun. I didn't set rush. I didn't set need to. Power wasn't in yelling or proving them wrong in a single moment. Power was in subtlety, in patience, in letting them underestimate me until the walls were already crumbling. I sent an email to Carlson about a new report, brief, professional, attached are the projections for next quarter. I integrated some additional market analysis you requested last week. Minutes later, Carlson replied, "Well done, Mia, good insight." It started with small hints. I let the satisfaction sit. Quiet, unspoken, Kevin would never see it. The others wouldn't notice, but they would feel it eventually. Later in the cafeteria, I mentioned casually to Linda, my closest ally, I found an interesting angle for the project. Could increase efficiency by 12%. Really? She asked, eyes wide. I smiled, faint, calm. Someone has to make sure things actually succeed. Yes, I'll send the outline later, I said lightly, like it was nothing. Kevin passed by, smirking. Always working, huh, Mia? You really never take a break. His smirk faltered, just a fraction. I noticed that tiny crack thrilled me more than any public triumph ever could. In meetings, I started dropping small hints, strategic mentions. I ran the numbers again. Adjusted the growth forecast. Should impact Kevin Sipp's proposed model positively. Carlson looked over his glasses. Ah, interesting. Kevin's jaw tightened. Oh, I didn't account for that, he muttered under his breath. I didn't react. I only observed. Every micro-expression, every twitch, every stumble. I cataloged it. Every falter Kevin made was another step in my invisible ladder. One afternoon I requested a brief presentation. Not long, not flashy. Just precise data, just enough to make Carlson pause and think. I reviewed the client projections. I said voice even controlled. And there steps a potential increase in revenue if we adopt this approach. Kevin stammered, fumbling slides. Yes, but, well, I thought. Carlson leaned forward. That sips a solid point. Kevin, thoughts? You thought, I said softly, letting the words linger, but the numbers don't lie. He froze. I let him stew. Carlson nodded thoughtfully. My subtle nudge planted seeds of doubt without confrontation, without drama. That was the art of it. Outside the meeting, Linda whispered, Mia, you sir changing the game. I never seen you so calculated. Kevin's smugness began to falter. He'd approach Carlson with an idea, expecting immediate approval, only to see Carlson pause, look at me, then ask questions he hadn't anticipated. The doubt in his eyes was delicious. Small, sharp, silent victories. I started leaving traces strategically, emails sent at perfect times, casual mentions of completed research, subtle presentations highlighting overlooked strengths. I never bragged, I never shouted, I let the evidence speak quietly. I smiled faintly. They one set see it coming. Not yet, but they notice the ripple, and ripples turn into waves. Yes, I replied, and I outlined potential outcomes in the report I sent yesterday. Carlson, too, started glancing at me more often, not for validation but curiosity. Mia, did you consider this scenario? He asked one day. He nodded slowly, expression unreadable. That pause was mine, every glance over his shoulder, every subtle acknowledgement proof that my strategy was working. I had allies too, quiet ones, unnoticed by Kevin, unnoticed by most. Linda, Tom, even a few others who had grown tired of Kevin's arrogance. They were my subtle network. Keep me in the loop, Linda said one morning, passing me a note about internal updates. She nodded. understanding the gravity. We weren't conspiring, not openly. We were planting seeds, letting them grow silently. I smiled at her. Of course, discretion first, results second. By the end of the week, I noticed a shift. The office rhythm had changed subtly. Kevin hesitated before speaking. Carlson questioned assumptions more. The team began looking at me differently. Not yet openly, but the undercurrent was undeniable. And I felt it in my chest. A quiet thrill. I was no longer the underdog. No longer the one dismissed, underestimated, forgotten. I was the storm building silently in the background, invisible yet unstoppable. One evening I stayed late at my desk, reviewing emails, observing patterns, tweaking small presentations for maximum effect. Every move counts, I whispered to myself. Every pause, every subtle nudge, it all adds up. I imagined the moment when Kevin would realize he'd lost control, when Carlson would acknowledge my foresight, when the others would understand that the weak Mia they laughed at was quietly rewriting the rules. The thought made me smile, dark and controlled, satisfaction, anticipation, power. Because this wasn't just about revenge, this was about transformation, about claiming what had always been mine in spirit, but denied in practice. Every strategic move, every silent nudge, every subtle hint, it was mine and mine alone. By the time I shut down my laptop, the office was empty, the city quiet. I stood by the window, looking out at the skyline. The storm inside me had grown, steady and patient, and soon, very soon it would strike. Silent, precise, unstoppable. And they wouldn't know what hit them. The office felt different that Monday, thicker, charged. I could sense it before I even reached my desk. Whispers slithered through the air like smoke, curling around every corner, every cubicle. Did you hear? Someone murmured as I passed. I heard Mia, she has the contract. I froze for half a heartbeat. Then I smiled, faint, invisible. Let them talk. Let them speculate. The truth was mine. Kevin appeared at the copier, pretending to be casual, but I could see it, the twitch in his jaw, the way his fingers drummed nervously. I don't get it, he muttered to Tom, but loud enough for me to hear. How did she sets weak. She can this doesn't make sense. I leaned against the wall, watching, savoring every crack forming in his perfect facade. Later, Carlson called a brief meeting in his office. I walked in with my calmest stride, paper in hand, fingers relaxed. I didn't need to speak yet. They already knew something had shifted. Yes, sir, Kevin stammered. I thought I had, but, he swallowed hard. Mia her analysis. It's thorough. She integrated elements I hadn't considered. Kevin, Carlson said, voice clipped. Have you reviewed the latest updates? Carlson eyes narrowed. Interesting. Kevin Spee's face paled. I can adjust it, no problem. I smiled faintly. I've already incorporated the adjustments, I said softly, letting the words hang in the air. Carlson tilted his head, suspicion flickering across his face. You did. Yes, I said. Calm, controlled. I made sure the numbers align with the projected goals and accounted for potential market shifts. Kevin's jaw tightened. His eyes flicked between me and Carlson, panic growing like smoke under skin. Good, Carlson said slowly. We still proceed with this approach. Mia, make sure the documentation is complete for the board review. By afternoon, rumors had taken hold, whispers echoed through the cubicles. I nodded. Every fiber of me thrummed with quiet satisfaction. Kevin looked ready to explode. He stormed out, slamming the door softly, trying to mask the tremor in his voice. Have you seen Mia notes? She handling it all. I passed by Linda, and she leaned close. They stirred panicking. Kevin charm isn't working anymore. Carlson is cautious now. He actually listening to you. Yeah, I heard she owns the project now, completely. I let a small dark smile curve my lips. Quietly, Linda, let them unravel themselves. Can what? Tom asked, crossing his arms. In the break room, Kevin muttered, unable to keep his frustration contained. This is impossible. She can Tom raised an eyebrow. Well, seems like she earned it. Kevin head snapped around. Earned it? She weak. She taking over everything, Kevin hissed. everything we were supposed to control, and Carlson, he Seps letting it happen. I walked past them, casual, like I hadn't heard, but I had. Every word, every admission, every crack in Kevin's armor became my quiet triumph. By late afternoon, office alliances were fraying. Conversations were punctuated with tension, eyes darting, whispers turned to pointed questions. I thought we were a team, Sarah said quietly to Linda. Control? Sarah whispered. How? She Seps, she Seps, she Seps, she Seps, she Seps, she Seps. I heard enough. The undercurrent of panic, jealousy, and disbelief coursing through the office was intoxicating. I didn't need to speak. I didn't need to justify. They were unraveling themselves. We are, Linda replied. But Mia, she Seps different now. She Seps in control. Later, Carlson stopped by my desk. Mia, the board review is next week. Make sure everything is perfect. I've already prepared it, I said softly, meeting his gaze steadily. He hesitated, then nodded. Good, I trust your judgment. I leaned back in my chair, watching the office buzz around me. Every glance, every whisper, every sidelong comment was a confirmation. The weak Maya they'd dismissed was no longer invisible. She was formidable, strategic, unseen, yet undeniable. Kevin passed by again, and this time he didn't even try to hide his tension. He muttered something under his breath. Desperate, angry, bitter. Those words, quiet as they were, felt like victory. Trust, recognition, power, the subtle shift of energy. Carlson looking to me instead of Kevin. Kevin losing his confident stride, alliances bending under my influence. It was intoxicating. I didn't respond. I didn't need to. Let him unravel. Let them all. Every insult, every doubt, every condescending remark they'd ever made was now a thread pulling through their own unraveling. I leaned back in my chair and let a small, satisfied smile curl my lips. My pulse was steady, heart calm but electric. Watching them scramble, watching the silent acknowledgement of my power sink in, was bittersweet. A reminder of every slight, every dismissal, every moment I had been underestimated. The contract, the strategic moves, the subtle hints. It all led here. Every ripple I had created now surged into waves. Silent revenge. Quiet, patient, deliberate. And now the office was mine. Not with noise, not with confrontation, but with the undeniable weight of capability. I felt it deep in my chest, power settling in my hands. Electric. Irresistible. True. I stepped into the boardroom like any other day. Calm, controlled, but the air was heavy with tension, thicker than I remembered it ever being. Kevin smirked at first, confidence radiating off him in waves. He thought today would be just another stage for his charm. Ready to present, Mia? Carlson asked casually, reclining slightly in his chair. His tone held that familiar mix of condescension and expectation. I nodded. Yes, but today it suts a little different. I placed a folder on the table. Simple, unassuming, yet heavy with power. This, I said softly, letting my fingers brush over the edge, is the contract. Kevin raised an eyebrow. Different how? He asked, voice dripping with smugness. Kevin Seps' smirk faltered. He leaned forward, trying to peek at the folder. Wait, what? I ignored him, eyes fixed on Carlson. You remember the project you told me I couldn't set handle? I asked, voice steady. The one you said I was too weak for. The room went silent. Carlson Seps' eyes narrowed, suspicion flickering across his features. Yes. But nothing, I interrupted gently. I quietly secured legal ownership, the project, the stakes, all of it, legally, indisputably, mine. Kevin Seps' jaw dropped. You can set. Yes, I said, calm, unyielding. I can. And I did. Carlson Seps' hand twitched as if he wanted to dismiss it, to redirect, to reclaim control. Mia. I held up a hand. This isn't set up for debate. My lawyer is present. We ensured everything is airtight. At the corner of the room, my lawyer gave a subtle nod, firm and unyielding. Carlson blinked. His carefully constructed authority began to wobble. You thought charm would shield you? I asked, voice low, deliberate. You thought arrogance would make you untouchable? Kevin stammered, words failing him. But, I thought. His eyes darted around the room, searching for an ally, a loophole, a way out. There was none. I opened the folder, sliding it across the table toward Carlson. Every clause, every legal right. Documented, verified. No one can touch it but me. You labeled me weak. You laughed. You doubted me. Every insult, every snide comment, every eye roll. It's all mirrored here. Quietly, strategically, I turned it into action. Kevin Sepp's face went pale. Mia, this isn't set, I mean, you underestimated me, I said softly. And that was your first mistake. You didn't set want to, I said, because it Sepp's easier to dismiss someone you believe is weak. But weakness isn't Sepp's absence of strength. It Sepp's the camouflage of patience, of observation, of quiet determination. Carlson swallowed hard, struggling to maintain composure. Mia, I didn't set realize how I survived your mockery, I said, voice firm, and how I turned it into undeniable proof. Every underestimation, every laugh, every slight, you see it now. I am not weak. I am precise. I am patient, and I am unstoppable. I let the words linger, each one a silent hammer striking the walls of their arrogance. Kevin Sepp's hands shook slightly as he adjusted his tie, trying to reclaim some sense of control. This is how. Carlson leaned back, face pale, eyes flicking between the folder and me. His voice had lost its usual sharpness. I see, this is impressive. Kevin's arrogance shattered completely. I can't believe it, he whispered, voice tight. His confidence, once a shield, was gone. Vulnerability leaked from him like a slow wound. I smiled faintly, almost cruelly. Its steps more than impressive, its steps inevitable. Silent, careful, relentless. Just like I steps always been. I leaned forward, resting my hands on the table. I've watched, I've waited. I've learned your weaknesses, your blind spots, your overconfidence, and I turned them into a strategy. Every word you used to mock me, every glance that dismissed me, all of it fueled this. My victory isn't loud. It doesn't need to be. It speaks for itself. Carlson opened his mouth, then closed it. There was no command he could give that would undo what was done. My lawyer's calm presence reminded him of the reality. The contract was solid, undeniable. Kevin's shoulders slumped. I didn't see it coming, he admitted quietly, voice cracking. That Sepp's the point, I said. You never do. That Sepp's why you fail. That Sepp's why you underestimate. And that Sepp's why I win. I stood, letting the gravity of the moment settle over the room. Eyes on me, silence stretching. Every heartbeat a drum of quiet triumph. Carlson cleared his throat. Finally. Mia, this changes everything. I acknowledge your control over the project. I gathered my folder calmly, fingers brushing over the crisp edges. Let this be a reminder, I said softly, letting my voice carry just enough weight. Underestimating someone like me has consequences. Silent, strategic, absolute. Kevin muttered something under his breath. Anger, disbelief, but I didn't need to hear it. I already knew. I had broken the image, shattered the assumptions. The weak label was gone. Obliterated. I nodded. Good, because weak, I am not. Invisible, perhaps once, but underestimated? Never again. For the first time in my life, I felt fully vindicated. Every insult, every doubt, every sneer, mirrored back at them, every plan executed flawlessly. I smiled faintly, dark and calm, knowing one truth: I had rewritten the rules, and I had done it my way. I walked out of the boardroom, my chest light, pulse steady, mind clear. Behind me, the air still trembled with disbelief. Shock, humiliation, and the quiet acknowledgement of my power. The office was quieter than usual, too quiet. Even the hum of the fluorescent light seemed subdued, like the building itself was holding its breath. Powerful, precise, unstoppable. Weak, no. Kevin passed my desk, eyes downcast, shoulders slumped. The arrogance I had endured for months, weeks, really was gone. It had been replaced by a brittle tension I could feel from across the room. I looked up slowly, meeting his gaze. He flinched under my calm stare. Hey, Mia, he muttered, voice small. I wanted to say, congratulations. Thank you, I said softly, not harshly, just quietly. The weight of my voice carried more than any shout ever could. He nodded, muttered something incomprehensible, and walked away. The sound of his steps, hesitant, uneven, was oddly satisfying, not for vengeance itself, but for the truth settling. Carlson stopped by my desk shortly after, papers in hand but unreadable expression on his face. "Mia," he began, clearing his throat. "I realize now, I underestimated you. Not just your skills, but your patience, your strategy." I listened, silent, letting the words fill the empty space around us. "I thought I was guiding you, mentoring you, but I see now I overlooked something fundamental," he continued. "Your quiet resilience. It's impressive." I tilted my head slightly, a faint smile touching my lips. "Impressive or underestimated?" I asked softly. He exhaled slowly, eyes averted. "Both, I suppose, and it's a hard lesson to learn." I nodded, leaning back in my chair. Sometimes the most dangerous people are the ones you think are weak. The ones you dismiss. That sips where strategy thrives. In silence, in observation, in patience. He looked at me then. Really looked, and for the first time I saw the weight of realization in his eyes. The quiet guilt. The understanding that this wasn't just about a project. It was about their perception of me. I thought about Kevin again. How smug he had been. How easily he assumed victory. How quickly he crumbled once the truth surfaced. And I didn't feel glee. Not really. I felt balance restored. Quiet, inevitable, precise. Later I walked past the conference room. Inside, a few colleagues lingered, whispering, glancing at the boardroom where the contract had been revealed. I caught a snippet of conversation. "Exactly. And quietly, no dramatics. She just took control. She really did it." I let them speak, letting the reality sink in. The whispers, the reassessment, the subtle acknowledgement of power, all of it was the truest reward. Not confrontation, not loud triumph, but the knowledge that their assumptions had been shattered. I said quietly. "More than okay. Relief, I think. Calm satisfaction. They understand now, without me having to scream it." Linda stopped by, leaning casually against the desk. "You okay?" she asked. I returned to my desk and sat down. The contract rested in the drawer, folded neatly, a symbol of strategy, patience, and careful planning. I ran my fingers over the edge. It wasn't a trophy, it was a statement. I thought about the months of planning, the observation, the patience, how every slight, every condescending glance, every whisper had fueled a strategy they never suspected. "Quiet justice," she murmured. "Exactly," I said, letting the words settle. The silence between us carried more weight than anything spoken aloud. Kevin's arrogance, gone. Carlson's pride, tempered by understanding. The office dynamics shifted subtly, but unmistakably. Weakness was no longer a label they could carelessly apply. And now it was over. The storm had passed, leaving behind a clear, quiet sky. I leaned back, eyes closing briefly. Relief, calm, satisfaction. Not the loud, vengeful satisfaction of a public takedown, but the deep, steady kind that comes from seeing justice done quietly, invisibly, inevitably. Sometimes revenge isn't a spectacle. Sometimes it's the subtle, unspoken shift of balance. A quiet reminder that underestimating someone can be the most dangerous mistake of all. I opened my laptop again, reviewing the project one last time. Everything was in place. Every detail, every contingency accounted for. My work, my strategy, my patience, all intact. Linda peeked over my shoulder. "You really did it," she said softly. And in that moment, I realized that silence was louder than any argument, patience stronger than any confrontation, and quiet strategy more powerful than arrogance. I exhaled, letting the tension leave my shoulders. And the office buzzed softly around me, the hum of lights, the faint clatter of keyboards. Life continued, as it always did, but now, with respect settled, assumptions corrected, and justice quietly served. "I did," I agreed. Not proudly, not boastfully, just truthfully. And I knew, finally, that week had never been me. The storm had passed, and in its place, calm. I smiled faintly, eyes soft, relief more than triumph, balance restored. "Morning," I replied softly, nodding. No need for theatrics. Silence itself can be louder than words. I walked into the office that Monday morning with a calm I hadn't known I could carry. Not brash, not triumphant. Just confident. Every step measured, deliberate. I could feel it in the way the floorboards creaked under my heels, in the way the fluorescent lights caught my hair, in the subtle shift of the air around me. Linda looked up from her desk and smiled faintly. "Morning, Mia," she said. But this time it wasn't just a greeting, it was respect. Quiet, unspoken, earned. Kevin passed by, lingering for a moment longer than necessary. His eyes flicked to mine, searching, evaluating. Gone was the arrogance, replaced with caution, disbelief, and maybe a hint of respect. I turned to him casually. "Good morning, Kevin," I said, my voice light, neutral, almost kind. He froze. "Morning," he mumbled, retreating to his desk. Carlson was already at the coffee machine, avoiding eye contact, as if the very act of looking at me carried weight he wasn't ready to bear. I caught his gaze briefly. "Everything ready for the presentation?" I asked calmly. "Yes," he replied, voice low, careful, all in order. Later I met with my mentor in the small conference room. He gave me a quiet nod as I entered. I nodded, letting the silence linger. No one needed to comment on what had changed. They felt it, I felt it. The subtle shift in power, the invisible weight of respect settling on my shoulders. I leaned back in the chair, letting the words sink in. It didn't feel like victory at the time, I admitted. It was more patience, watching, learning, every step calculated, every slight noted, every insult remembered and turned into leverage. "You did it," he said, voice soft, almost proud. "Not with anger, not with noise. You rose above." He smiled faintly. "That SEP's the kind of strength few understand. People think it SEP's brute force, confrontation, shouting over others, but real power is knowing your worth, and waiting until the world has no choice but to see it."